going on, guys? Welcome back to Pure Evil MMA. I'm your host, as always, Evil Eddie, and what a freaking crazy week it was. I'm trying not to swear like I told you guys in the last stream, but what a crazy week it's been for MMA fans between UFC going down between DC and Lewis, which DC now defended the title, and against a heavyweight. Two-time champion defends it in both classes. And we're going to talk about that on tomorrow's podcast, but today, before we even talk about today, I just want to say really quick, guys, subscribe down below. And we're also on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, all those good places. If you're watching here on YouTube, we're actually live right now. It is 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and I just wrapped up with Cage Titans 41 last night, all the way out in Plymouth, Mass. I drove 3 hours. Well, it says on the GPS it's going to take like 2.5 hours here from New Haven, Connecticut. I'm from right around the corner from where Yale, Skull and Bone Secret Society, which I actually thought it would be kind of cool to go down there with the GoPro tomorrow and walk around the Secret Society and see some of the stuff that people talk about on the internet, little clues and just like little things. Because you can actually kind of walk inside the courtyard. Like, you can get up close and personal, but I'll be tweeting and texting about that later on tonight because I've just been falling down rabbit hole after rabbit hole with local ghost stories and stuff, but we're not here to talk about that, even though it is Pure Evil MMA. But you can check that out later if you want on Twitter at evil_echo. That's EVIL_ECCL. Also on Instagram at Pure Evil MMA. We have a stack show today. Where did I put the remote? We have a stack show today, guys. And really quick, before we even start the lineup, I just want to say for the listeners on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, hop over to the YouTube channel. For some reason, we have 10 times more listeners on iTunes than... Maybe, do I have an ugly mug? Like, what's going on? Tell me what the issue is and we'll try to fix it. Or maybe, there are a lot of people, even me personally, I like listening to podcasts over watching a video or something like that. But honestly, guys, we have a lot of fun on these live streams. And one thing that you can do on the live stream that you can't do on the podcast, whatever, is engage with me. Tweet at me live on air. We got the chat room open now as well. We're trying to break 1,000 subscribers by the end of this month. Help us reach our goal. Subscribe down below here at Pure Evil MMA. Or if you're listening on iTunes, it's youtube.com/Pure Evil MMA. But that's enough of that. Let's talk about Cage Titans 41. The lineup for today's show goes as follows. Right now we're doing the introduction, but at 8:10, in 10 minutes, 6 minutes from now, Chris O'Brien is going to be calling in. And he trains alongside Joe Giannetti. Now, I talked to Joe Giannetti last night, right? That's the big story. That's what people were initially tuning in or wanted to know the result of Cage Titans, mainly to see what happens with Joe Giannetti. Now, backstory for any new MMA listeners, any new people that are new to the MMA scene, Joe Giannetti fighting out here on the East Coast, fighting over at Cage Titans. He gets his big shot on the Ultimate Fighter, one of the last seasons, Ultimate Fighter season 27. And I've actually grown really close with a lot of guys now. But before that season even aired, there was only 2 people I was talking to prior, whether through Snapchat or via text message, because I linked up with their managers. It was Luis, the violent Bob Ross, who actually texted me a year prior to being on the Ultimate Fighter, and it was showing me all the footage from some of his past fights. As a matter of fact, the clip that he has now pinned at the top of his Twitter page, I believe it's still there, is the clip that he was sending me, and I was just super impressed by it was only a matter of time before Luis, and he blew up on that season. But the one guy on this season who made it through the entire thing was finish his opponent in 13 seconds, and I spoke to the guy that he beat in 13 seconds. A great guy, John Gunther. He's such a pleasure to talk with. Every guy in that season had such a perfect character role. John Gunther was definitely one of the fan favorites, but he got beat by Joe Giannetti in 13, I believe it was 13 seconds in the very first episode. So right off the bat, Joe Giannetti pulls through. In the time when the UFC really needed something big to happen for the Ultimate Fighter, Joe Giannetti pulled it off. That season, especially after the episode, the views went up the roof. I think it was tweeted by Jetty Goodman that after the first episode, especially that episode, I believe they got 5 times more. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jetty, I'll text Jetty and clarify this because we talk all the time as well via Twitter. If you're not following Jetty, you're probably not on Twitter, which is a huge mistake if you're in the MMA scene, by the way. But that was a great season, Ultimate Fighter. He goes through the entire things, makes it to the finale. He makes it to the finale. Unfortunately, doesn't win. One of the reasons being the second round that they had, the reffing in there was just, in that second round, I believe they could have, should have, didn't stand Joe up. And last night, I kind of saw the same thing happen. Let me just check the live stream. Make sure we're up and running. We sound good. We sound pretty. All right, let me just check this really quick. All right, sick. All right, so look. He makes it through. That's the only fight he loses. This was a season of undefeated fighters. No one lost. Even the guys that did lose on the season, I heard it didn't count against their record. Now, last night, Joe's going into this thing with one loss because he lost in the finale. And he didn't get signed. And he came on here, Pure Evil MMA, did not an exclusive interview, but for the first time spoke about what was going on, why he didn't get signed, how he felt about this. And it was heartbreaking to hear, man, because the entire season, everyone here on the East Coast just felt the vibe. We were so excited. Joe was going out, doing the viewing parties. It felt so right. Things felt so right. After watching this kid go through what he went through and then share his story on The Ultimate Fighter, it's just so heartbreaking. When he promised his father that, at the airport, he's going to come back a UFC fighter. He didn't do anything wrong. He did nothing wrong. The reasons I've been hearing why he didn't make it in the UFC have nothing to do with how he fights. I mean, even Violent Bob Ross, after the finale, was like, yeah, you see that finish that I just ripped off right there? Joe Giannetti backstage showed me how to do that. I'm calling that the Giannetti choke or something like that. And last night, man, the energy was here for Cage Titans. It was so through the roof. Everyone was walking around with snatch and necks and cash and check shirts for Joe. Between Joe and Team Lozon over there for Randy Costa, who I actually also tried reaching out to, I didn't hear anything back from Randy as of yet. I'll try to get him on the show. I've been trying to reach out to Randy. So anyone out there that's connected to Randy, tell him to hit me up. Why isn't he seeing my messages? This is awful. You need to come on here and share. I believe I've had Randy on once or twice before, I believe. All right, Jacobo is going to be calling in. All right, really quick run through the lineup because we're going to be talking to Joe's teammate. Long story short, Joe did not win last night. I might have scored 2 rounds for Joe. It ended up going to a draw. And in this scenario, it was just like, and I'm going to share my reaction in a minute. I'm going to share it with Chris O'Brien. Really quick, let me run you through the lineup. Chris O'Brien calling in just a minute. Followed up by Kin Moy, trainer on Team Citadel MMA Fitness. And listen, man, this guy is so impressive. He even beat Andre Sukumta. And they've had 2 fights. But the first time he won, he lost in the second fight. He trains at the UFC gym. I believe he was out for like almost 2 years. So we're going to be speaking to him at 8:20. Every interview is going to be 10 minutes. I've listened to you guys. This is what you want. 10-minute interviews. Short, right to the point, full energy. And we're going to deliver that to you tonight. 8:30, we got Marty NAVIS calling in, who also trains with the Lozon gym. Joe Lozon. Big name in the MMA scene. Another Ultimate Fighter alumni alongside my co-host, James Sweeney, who was on Season 10 Ultimate Fighter with Kimbo, Big Brown, Roy Nelson, Matt Mitrione, and all of them. So anytime you see somebody that's had a good time on Ultimate Fighter, it's always nice to see them in person, talk to them, see where they're at right now. Joe Lozon has the leading number, I believe, in Fight of the Night bonuses, 50K bonuses, man. He's always putting on Fight of the Nights. If you don't know who Joe Lozon is, I'm really surprised because, Jesus, you must be new to the sport, and that's okay. Go check out his shit. But if you're training under Joe and you go home with a couple W's, East Coast is going to be feeling good, and I can promise you that. All good vibes last night. South Shore boys and girls, all good vibes. That crowd, and we're going to be talking about it. Cage Titans is just phenomenal. Let me run through it. All right, Marty NAVIS, 8:30. 8:40, Jacobo Apatow is going to be calling in. He is the Bantamweight Amateur Champion over there. I tried reaching out to some of the other fighters as well. Stapleton, I really wanted to get on the show. I was outside doing my clip. He came up to me and was like, man, I'm a huge fan of your show. I'm not a fan, but I support Pure Evil MMA. And man, that meant a lot. I had about 7 people come up to me last night, and it was so reassuring that I'm doing the right thing here, that I got to keep pushing forward and giving you guys what you want. I feel like I'm different. I'm not this cookie cutter journalist that you see out there. I don't like sitting there. Honestly, I got to be 100. I don't like going out there doing the results and doing all that. I like giving you guys pure creative content. And I got the video, the live action fight companion. We're going to be checking that out. I'm trying to drop it by tomorrow night, but you guys can check it out down here on the playlist on the YouTube channel. You're missing out if you're just on on the iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. I'm telling you guys, I got a lot of great content here on the YouTube channel. So we got that coming for you. Let's get Chris O'Brien, and he's going to be calling in any second. Also, really quick to end the show, special guest Brian Gerson joining us from MMA Sucker, who's put in so much work, man. This guy is the underdog here, really doing all the footwork right now that you need to do early on in your media career to get noticed, get down, be credible. And I really like this kid. I like what he thinks. He knows everything about these local fighters especially, and we're going to hear his take on last night. Even if he didn't catch every fight, just the feeling, the vibe that we captured just through, let me get Chris here, just through the energy, just through the crowd there. That's one of my favorite things. I always say this. It reminds me of gangs in New York. Yeah, here's Chris right here. Yeah, call, bud. And Chris actually told me that he's got a little bit of a sore throat, so don't mind him. Let me pull in the Instagram page for you guys. Let's take a look at the Instagram page. Here, what's the number? Here you go, Chris. 321. Yeah, I'm not going to give up a number. Shit, now I typed the wrong number. Can you guys, like, figure out what my number is just by hearing the clicks? I wonder that. Like, just by hearing those little clicks, can you figure out... My camera's on. Maybe you guys can figure out just how I was doing it with the camera. Chris O'Brien, the Bearded Dragon. What's going on, Chris?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
1 second, let me put you on speakerphone. All right, guys. We got the man, the myth, and the legend here joining us on Pure Evil MMA for like the 7th time now. I mean, you're an alumni here. You've got your horns. You've worn them. You can even get the cape and the tail at this point. You're full-blown Pure Evil vet right now, Chris. But, man, thank you so much for calling in. There's so much that's been going on. First off, how you feeling, man? We were really hoping to see you in there last night.
Yeah, man, I'm just kind of taking a little bit of time off. I honestly, after the last fight, I kind of wanted to get right back in there. But, I talked to some teammates and friends and kind of decided I'd take a little time off and just try to kind of further my craft and get a little stronger, get a little better, sharpen the tools, so to speak, and then kind of go from there. But it was cool just to, kind of be a fan and be a teammate first and foremost last night again and just kind of be there for everybody that was competing.
So, obviously, going into this fight, it was so huge. Like, let's cut to the meat and potatoes of things like everybody wants. Going into last night was so huge. Joe's story is so interesting. This has been the year of Joe Giannetti, really, for the underground scene, trying to make it big. He's so close, within arm's reach. If you're not aware of his story, guys, you can go back and watch on The Ultimate Fighter or check out the interview that we did recently. He really needed to go in here tonight, make an impression. What were the vibes like going into this fight with Joe? Because I even went backstage. He looked calm, cool, relaxed. I mean, he had a tough opponent too, undefeated guy, a finisher nonetheless. But personally, Chris, I scored 2 rounds to 1 for Joe, and I do believe, like, this is just my opinion, I really think that it was another issue with the reffing this time around, not knowing like when to stand them up. Before we jump into all that, what were you seeing with Joe backstage? How was he feeling? What was going on?
Obviously, if you know me and Joe, you know me and him are pretty close. Even just not even so much yesterday, like he's been super calm, super relaxed, but just genuinely excited for the matchup. I know not even so much that it was Josh Harvey, and there's obviously a history between them. Like, if you guys don't know, like they've been kind of trying to fight each other since they were amateurs, and things just never worked out to kind of like come to fruition. So. Not even so much for the matchup, but he was excited to just get back in there and kind of get the ball rolling. He feels like he belongs to be, on that world stage, and he just wanted the opportunity to, get out there and really show what he's been working on and how much he's improved. As far as the actual fight's concerned, man, I know I'm going to sound like a biased teammate, and maybe I am, but in the moment last night, I had a 2-1 Joe. If we go through the rounds, I don't know. I still feel like you could probably give it to Joe, but now that I'm kind of sat back and kind of had 24 hours to go back through the fight, I can kind of see a draw too. And the reason I say that is the first round, the only real significant thing that happened was Joe's submission attempt. It wasn't even like Harvey hit a takedown and he got a guillotine attempt. he kind of jumped guard and pulled the guillotine, and Harvey was stuck in it for what felt like half the round, and then did nothing on the ground to really score any serious points. So how do you score that first round? It's not even like if Harvey hit the takedown and then there was a submission attempt, well, you would give points to Harvey for the takedown. But Joe pulled guard. That Harvey didn't do anything. And then he really didn't do anything on the ground towards the end of the round. So it's like, how do you score that? I mean, personally, I could see that as a toss-up. Like, maybe no one won that round. And then I think the second round, I think if I remember correctly, Harvey comes out, hits a takedown, and kind of controls Joe on the ground. But once again, didn't really do much. And, me being myself, I'm on the floor screaming at the ref the entire last half of the second round, like, stand them up. You know what I mean? And I kind of agree with you. I really do think the ref should have stood them up. There wasn't enough activity.
Once again, the second round. It was the second round once again.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not faulting Harvey at all for that. It's not for a lack of trying. It's just Joe's. He does really well at stifling people on the ground and getting that high guard. And he's got those long legs and kind of can manipulate
and
you.
he was doing damage off of his back as well. Like, how do you score somebody? Like, I feel like judges nowadays, they don't understand that just because you're on top doesn't mean you're winning the round.
Exactly, and that's I think that's even more so in the first round. It's like, yeah, Harvey was on top, but again, he didn't score the points for the takedown. He didn't get a takedown. Joe pulled guard into a submission that he held for literally half the round. So, again, so it's just because he was on top, I don't see him winning in that position. Then the third round, I think it was all Joe's round. By no means do I think it was a 10-8. I think he won handily, though. He did the most damage
and
in
almost
the fight,
finished him.
The closest to finishing it.
I posted the video of Joe literally almost finishing him right there, and if it wasn't for his opponent moving at that last split second where he turned his head, it was so close to being finished, at least from my vantage point. What were you seeing there? I believe it was towards the later end of that round where it really seemed like Joe had it. He had it.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. It was probably about 2 minutes left in the round, and especially from that video you posted, it was really great timing by Harvey to move, because it was even if they weren't the strongest shots in the world, they were a ton of them, and they were coming in very fast and vicious.
And from far back, he was launching them.
Situation, I think a ref has to kind of step in and stop it if you don't move. So I think he moved at the right time. So it's like, it's kind of how you score that first round. I think Harvey gets the second round, Joe gets the third round, and it's how you score that first round. And if a judge says, yeah, I don't think anyone won that first round, well, then that's a tie.
Man, I'm going back, I'm watching it. I think that first round, Joe. Second round, his opponent, Harvey. Third round, Joe. And I can see why you think it was a draw, but I think that third round was definitely enough. I mean, there was a little bit of blood in the back of Joe's head. There was a point where he got slammed pretty hard, and I got nervous in those moments. Forgot what round that was. But there was no damage done by Harvey, just keeping top control. And Harvey's a big guy, man. Like I said, he's a finisher. He's a bigger guy. He looks amazing on paper if you're looking what he has to offer on paper. How do you think Harvey did? I mean, I don't think he won, but he did an amazing job.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that going in. He's, I believe he's out of Young's MMA up in Maine. Strong wrestlers up there. He's no exception, obviously. I mean, even just getting Joe down, Joe's a pain in the ass to get down. I know from experience. Not that I'm some great wrestler, but I think he did well. He's strong. He did what he had to do. I still don't think he won. And like I said, I'm no MMA judge, so like I said, in the moment, I had the first round Joe, second round Harvey, third round Joe. I thought he had it. Joe was telling me through the cage that he didn't think he won.
Yeah, he was saying that to me too afterwards.
Critic, anyway, so
he was saying that to me again afterwards, and it's so upsetting, man, because that's not the way I saw it. And obviously, he wanted the win. It was really nice of him. He donated his entire purse to what foundation? Before we let you go.
Yeah, so that's actually one of our coaches, Mark Gioppi. His son Mason has a brain tumor, and he's had it for years. It's just been an ongoing battle, and things have gotten a little bit tougher in the last few months, especially. So, Cage Titans kind of helping, raise some money for them through a raffle last night. I've known Mark a long time. Joe has too. He's a staple at South Shore Sport Fighting. We love his family. Do anything for the guy. So, so Joe, I'm not sure if he was planning on that for a while, but he donated his whole fight purse, anything he got from tickets and from Cage Titans for that fight to them.
Really quick, do you think we're going to see Joe fight in the next 2-3 months here, or what do you think? How do you feel personally, without giving away what would you like to see him do?
That boy is going to be in the gym tomorrow by late afternoon at the latest, and that boy is going to be fighting by January at the latest.
Man,
There's
I love
no way in hell that he won't be.
I love it, man.
I love the kid. I think he should hold his head a lot higher than it was last night. And like I said, at worst that was a draw. I don't see that as a loss at all. Some wicked tough opponent, and sky's still the limit for him.
Chris O'Brien, thank you so much, boss. We got to talk to you soon, get a full-fledged interview. Maybe I'll even take a ride out there one day, closer to when you have an upcoming fight or something like that. But Chris, thank you once again. You're about to get your 10th tally here on Pure Evil MMA, I swear.
Hell yeah, let's go.
All right, have a good night, Chris, and thank you so much for coming on Pure Evil MMA.
Have a good one, man.
There you guys go, the Bearded Dragon, the former amateur champ over there at Cage Titans. We got Kin Moy calling in next. Let me message Kin really quickly. And Kat Sikis was going to come on the show, but she's actually at a Patriots game. She put on an amazing fight as well. Let me see where Kin Moy is. Kin Moy. There you go. All right. Hey, man, give me a call. Give me a call on the cell phone. All right, guys, Kin Moy up next. We're going to get his take, his opponent last night, and obviously being out for 2 years is a hell of a long time to be out. So I want to see how he felt last night. Also, I was telling you guys, he had a fight with Andre Sukumta. He's had 2 fights with Andre Sukumta. He trains out of the UFC gym, and he went in there last night against Korean. I'm going to look everything up right now on Tapology about his opponent, because I didn't know too much about his opponent. But Kin Moy has been around the scene for a few years here now. So he's going to be calling in any second. Guys, make sure to go check out the Cage Titans hashtags on Instagram. Everyone's posting their stuff. Oh, my stuff's up there. I even did a backstage interview, but a walkout interview. As Joe was coming up one side, I came up the other, and we did a quick interview. His initial thoughts of right after the fight. And like Chris was saying, man, he was very upset that he did not go home with the win last night, but it was a draw. All right, we got Kin Moy here on the phone. King Kong Moy joining us, who also had a victory last night. What's going on, Kin? How you doing?
Hey, how are you, man? Thanks for having me tonight.
Of course, man. I mean, first off, let's jump right into the meat and potatoes of things, because obviously you're up for 2 years. So going into this fight, how are you feeling? Like, for me personally, I don't know if I believe in ring rust. Now that you've gone through it, is it real? Is it not real? How'd you feel?
You know, it's funny. Everyone has such a different opinion on that. Like, there's very experienced guys who I've talked to who are like, yeah, that's not a thing. And for me, in the past, when I've had time off, it's affected me. I think in this case, it didn't look like I had ring rust, because I feel like in the time that I've had off, my overall skills have gotten better. But I was really nervous and really uncomfortable in there compared to when I competed before. So I guess I just felt as if, like, I hadn't experienced that in a long time. And it made me uncomfortable, but at the same time, I think I looked all right just because I've been training and I've obviously improved through training. So I kind of believe in it, yeah.
You do believe it. What was the toughest part? Just like the jitters about it? Like when you were in there, it seemed like you were loose, man. I mean, you had one of the most impressive performances last night. Do you maybe think that's because you were expecting more out of yourself?
It could be that. To be honest, I think that I felt... It's just, sparring is so different from fighting that, like, I just haven't had someone really hit me with bad intentions in a long time with little baby gloves. And I guess I don't know why I would ever expect for it to be like a fun little walk in the park, but when he cracked me in the face and it hurt, I was like, oh, what's going on? This isn't what I signed up for. I mean, it is what I signed up for, but I had forgotten that element of it, and it kind of made me just not as comfortable, and I wasn't expecting that. I mean, again, poker face, but I think that's the biggest difference. I just forgot the energy of someone trying to really mess you up as opposed to just play around with you in the gym.
And dude, just like the timing for your kicks and everything on point. I mean, I think you landed like over a dozen kicks right to the face. You almost knocked him out a couple of times in my book. Like I don't know how he was able to keep moving forward after taking that many hits to the face, man. And you fought some tough opponents before in the past. I mean, what was the level of toughness for your opponent?
Dude, it was unreal. I've watched it on Flow Combat like 7 times now. And I think I landed like 6 head kicks, and 3 of them or 4 of them even were actually really flush. He didn't care.
Right to the jaw, too.
There's a couple times I saw him wobble a little bit, and I was like, I got him now. And then within a second, he was just normal again, and I was just like, what is going on? Everyone I fought before who I've beaten, obviously the people who beat me, this didn't happen, but the people who I've beaten, I felt them break before I beat them. This kid, no matter what I did, he did not care. He smiled. He liked it. I think he's just kind of crazy.
And that's what you want in an opponent. You want somebody like that that's you can kind of perform to your best and just kind of highlight, like, man, I thought you won. I mean, before I even give my opinion, what rounds do you think you won? Do you go through the fight scoring it, or how did you think you did?
You know, when I'm in there, I'm very vocal about this. I hate decisions. I think that I would rather get knocked out than lose a boring decision, or even maybe win a boring decision. So as far as I'm concerned, if he's still up, I'm losing, if that makes sense. Like, not losing, like, per se, but it feels like I'm losing. It feels like I'm not doing what I should be doing. So when I watched it afterwards, I was like, oh yeah, I was definitely winning every moment. But when I was in there, I felt like, I didn't feel like that at all. I felt like, oh, he's still here, like, I'm fucking up, like, I have to do this, I have to do something better.
And there was a couple of points where you're actually going in really hard. You were throwing your elbows. You landed a couple of uppercuts. I was just overall really impressed with your performance. It was kind of crazy afterwards when I heard that it was 2 years. So that was the first time I actually got to see you fight live. I've heard about you, and like I said, you fought some tough opponents. When do you think you're going to get your shot, either at a title, or what are you thinking of doing next? I mean, what are you doing pushing forward here?
So actually, I missed it yesterday night after Cupcakes and Dubuque fought, and they decided that they were going to have a rematch. Colbert and the champion Jay Perrin decided that they would accept me as the challenger in January, and they called me to the ring. But I was upstairs, like
I was looking for you,
and I missed it completely.
I had the camera out for that clip, and as soon as they said it, I started looking behind me. I started looking for you. And then,
oh my God!
So what's your response to that? How do you respond to that now that you're here?
I am totally in for it. I mean, so I really feel as if even if I was, formerly #1 in New England or whatever, I don't feel like I deserve to get an immediate shot. I feel like everyone has to earn their shot by getting 2 wins. But at the same time, the fact of the matter is, the #1 contender spot, I thought I would have fought for, if Dan Dubuque won, I thought I would fight him to earn the shot. But the fact of the matter is, since he's doing the rematch, Jay needs an opponent in January. It's just like circumstances call for it. So, I mean, who am I to turn that down? So I will accept it for sure.
So how do you think that fight went? I mean, why do you think they chose you instead of, Johnny Cupcake or Dan?
I think that if there had been a winner of that, and to be honest, I watched it kind of like in the locker room, but I had a lot of things going. I just finished my fight, so maybe I wasn't clear-headed. But watching it, I thought that Cupcakes won that.
I did too. I had it scored for Cupcake.
Yeah, but in any case, I guess I feel as if since they are going to run it back, the show must go on. So if they're going to be doing that in January, those two competing against each other, that leaves Jay with no one, and it leaves the fans wanting a title fight in the bantamweight division, which is so hot right now. So I guess just if they thought I performed well enough that I'd be worth the shot, and again, even if it's not by conventional, means, I'm just like, I'll do it. I'll do it.
So let's get to what everybody really wants to know here. After your fight, obviously the main event went to a draw. What was your reaction to that?
The worst part about this is, that's such a good question, and I didn't even see the fight. I was like upstairs, like trying to pack up my stuff or something. So I heard all sorts of things, but I don't even have an opinion on it yet.
What were people saying around you? What were their opinions?
I've heard some people say that they thought, some people said that Harvey won. Some people were saying that they thought JoJo stole it with the last round. I don't even know what to think, because, I've just heard such varying things. I know a lot of people, though, were mad that it was a draw because, no one wants a draw.
Of course. That's like the worst thing to happen in a main event is to go to a draw. But
yeah, that's like the definition of anticlimactic.
Okay, so before we let you go really quick, man, I want to get your take here. Obviously, you fought Andre Sukumta before in the past. Would you ever like to get that third match in there? I mean, you won the first one, he won the second. If you make it to the big stage, that has to be on the list, right?
As funny as it is, I don't care about rematches. I've never asked for one when someone beat me, and I definitely have never been interested in one when I beat someone. The only reason I had that rematch with Andre in the beginning was because he happened to have the title. And as far as I'm concerned, like, once something's over, it's over. I understand, though, that there is a little bit of unfinished business, and believe me, I don't want to end it on a sour note. I want to be the one who finishes on top. But it doesn't really enter my mind very much. In fact, I actually kind of really dig that he, represents, Asian Americans with pride and stuff, and I think that's cool because we don't have a lot of sports athletes to look up to. So I actually really dig what he's doing, and I usually root for him and stuff like that. So I don't have like a super strong desire to fight him, but I mean, obviously, considering that he did get me last time, if he were in front of me and that were the scenario, I would be very into it. But not something I'm looking for per se.
Well, people eat that up, Blake. People eat that stuff up. So you got to understand, coming from my point here, I had to ask it. So, Ken, thank you so much for joining us here on Pure Evil MMA. We got to get you back on soon, especially if you get matched up with the title. That would be amazing. So I want to thank you so much. You got your Pure Evil MMA horns now, so we'll get you back on soon. Last but not least, man, any shout-outs, thank you, sponsors? The floor's all yours.
Absolutely. First off, thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be here. Secondly, shout out to my coaches at Citadel MMA, of course. Shout out to UFC Gym Boston. Shout out, who I forgot to shout out to, was the Lion Zone Boxing. They really helped me with my head movement for this fight. And, of course, shout out to Brazil 021 Jiu-Jitsu for, teaching me how to Jiu-Jitsu and get that finished. But, yeah, thanks a lot, man, for having me.
King Kong Moy. Thanks so much, man. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
There we go. All right, up next, guys, we got Marty Navis, who's going to be calling in. He changed with Joe Lozon. Like I said at the beginning of the show, when Joe gets one of his boys to get a W, the East Coast feels really good about it. So he's going to be calling in just a second. Let me send him a message right now. Marty Navis, who I believe is literally waiting for me to send him this message. Hey, man, give me a call. Give me a call, brother. Guys, make sure to go follow Marty Navis at marty.navis.7 on Instagram. You can follow along. Let's go check out his page here on Instagram. Marty, what's going on, man? I just gave your introduction, fighting out of Joe Lozon. And, man, when Joe's guys get a W, the East Coast goes crazy, man. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
So first off, man, going into this fight, obviously you won minute and 8 by rear naked choke in the third round. I mean, you actually won by TKO round 1 by ground and pound. Man, how's that feel getting the finish, going in there, hearing that crowd go crazy? What was your reaction in that pure moment right there?
Just trying to, stay calm, but it's a crazy feeling, man. Probably the best feeling in the world, getting your hand raised, knowing that you just suck the life out of somebody, man. It feels great. Especially
at Cage Titans. I mean, you know this. You've been fighting for Cage Titans forever now. So that crowd there, what they represent, the energy there's really nothing like it. One of my favorite promotions here on the East Coast. Is that kind of why you always go back, just to get that? The crowd there is better than anywhere around here on the East Coast, I got to say.
Yeah, no, it is. And, Cage Titans has always treated me good. Mike Povea, treat me good. So just keep fighting for him for now, and then, just keep moving forward, man. I love the environment. It's, I'm comfortable with it, so Mike treats me good. I treat him good, so, just come there and put on a show,
Well,
give the fans what they pay for.
You wanted to get back in the win column for this one, so how were you feeling preparing for this fight? How was your weight cut?
My weight cut actually is never that bad, I get pretty low myself, and, I didn't even have to sit in the sauna or anything. I made weight, and I do really good. So I kind of maintain my weight in the off season, and but I do what needs to be done, and I'm pretty good. Pretty good at it.
So obviously you had a really tough opponent, man. I mean, Swilling. I mean, every time he goes in there, he really does his best in there. What were you feeling in that first round? Did you get comfortable in that first round, just enough to unload with that ground and pound? Did you just want to unload it all there? You really thought you had the finish within sight?
Yeah, once I got him down, and I literally took him down right next to Joe, and
Perfect, yeah.
Being right next to Joe, man, that's the way I wanted it to be, anyways. And we just, and I felt comfortable on top of him. I knew he wasn't getting up. I'm like, yeah, this dude's not getting up. There's no way. So I, just kept heavy and kept raining shots. Every time he tried to move, I just changed my position a little bit. Drop his arm again. He wants to take his arm back out of there. Cool, I'll drop it again. So I'll just not letting him breathe at all.
So getting the W, man, obviously this is a huge push forward. When do you think you're going to be able to get back in there and fight again? Are you getting right back in the gym, or what's your schedule like here?
Usually, take maybe a couple days off, maybe even a week off at the gym, and then get right back in there and just keep getting better and, see what happens. Who knows? I might be back in there in January, maybe take a little more time than that. We don't know yet, it's pretty much on how we feel, but the main part is just, staying in the gym, getting better, always improving, and, staying healthy, because injuries do happen and it sucks, but it's the name of the game, man. So just keeping a clear head and just moving forward.
Well, you're an action junkie like I am. I mean, we're looking at your Instagram page right now. You go quadding all the time. I mean, you're in the front yard working out and stuff, man. So you got to be careful in there, and especially here on the East Coast when the wintertime comes, I love ripping the quads up. So it's going to be a fun one. But I have to ask you this, man. This is what everyone's going to want me to ask you: is how did you find Joe Lozon? How did you find that gym?
So I trained at Lakeville MMA for a while when I first started, and the head coach over there has trained with Joe for a long time, and he took me over there one day, and I just stayed at Joe's and got comfortable there, and look at me now, just improved my game, and I found the gym that I wanted to train at, and
And what's it like having somebody like him in your corner, man? I mean, I've interviewed a couple of guys out of the gym over there, and everyone, man, it's Joe Lozon. I mean, he's such a sweetheart in the game. As one of the biggest records for bringing home 50K bonuses inside the UFC. There's nothing like it, man. When like I said, when one of his boys gets a win on the East Coast, we go nuts. We literally go nuts.
Yeah, man, it's huge having him in my corner, just in my ear, and Joe's great coach, man. He knows, he loves it just as much as we love it, having him in the corner. He loves being in the corner with us, he's just so dedicated to fighting, and just like we are. And, when we do good, that's, man, he has his head high too, he's like, wow, I'm training all these guys and they're all doing good, man. It's a great feeling having him there. I feel so comfortable with him in my corner.
So last but not least, I have to ask you, were you able to catch the main event with Joe Giannetti?
I did not.
You did not? What were some of the things that you were hearing from other people around you about it?
I mean, I talked to Joe. He said that he thought that Harvey had 2 rounds. He had 1. But he said, pretty much judges seen a difference. So, but everybody had different opinions as always,
Yeah.
Someone else, everybody's always going to say something else about it. I talked to Harvey a little bit too. He said he got robbed, and but like I said, I didn't watch it myself, so.
It's got to be so frustrating. I mean, just even going to a decision is frustrating. To have it a draw and be the main event, I mean, no one's happy. Never. No one's going to be happy.
Fighting to a draw. I mean, 2 guys are going out there giving it their all, fighting, and you're going to give it a draw. Like, give someone a win and give someone a loss, So I don't understand judges sometimes, but you know what? That is why I am not a judge. So I don't know, man.
So last but not least, before we let you go, how did you celebrate this win last night? Did you go out and watch UFC between DC and Lewis, or how did you guys celebrate?
I always celebrate, man, getting a nice plate of food somewhere and have a couple drinks. And I did get down to the wharf for the main event. I watched DC and Lewis, and
What was it like at the after party? Because I wanted to go, man, but I traveled almost 4 hours to get up there here from New Haven all the way to Plymouth, Mass. Who was there at the after party? What was the vibe like?
It was good. It's always good, man. All the fighters go. That pretty much everybody that fought and a lot of people that are just at Cage Titans, all go back there and, just pack in that place. And, we all have a good time, everybody respects each other and have some drinks, man, having a good time watching the fights and just, having fun.
Marty, I want to thank you so much for joining me here on Pure Evil MMA. You got your horns, which means we got to get you back on here sometime soon. As soon as you got your next upcoming fight, man, we got to lock in and get you back on here. Talk about, how you're getting ready. We'll go through the old bada bing, bada boom with the interview, man. So thank you so much for joining me here, and I hope you have a great night. Last but not least,
thank you for having me.
If you have any sponsors, any shout-outs, anything at all, the floor is all yours.
I just want to thank everybody that supported me, all my sponsors, and, man, just got to keep this ball rolling.
All right, guys, make sure to go follow him on Instagram at marty.navis.7. Marty, have a great night, boss.
You too.
There you guys go. I mean, I love these Cage Titan guys. It's such like a close-knit family. The Boston accents, come on. You gotta represent. You gotta love that. Just the vibe, man. I mean, out of all the promotions here on the East Coast so far that I have covered, there really is nothing like it. Between that and also CES, who had an event the night before. I actually saw our friend Fabio Chiron at the shows last night. All right, guys, so calling in next, Jacoby Apito. He's going to be calling in. Let me text him right now, matter of fact. Jacobo. All right. Call in now. All right, so he was actually... I've been trying to get Jacobo on. I've been waiting to see. I mean, here's the pound for pound number one in New England. Punchkin King of the Northeast, 2-division champion, lover of plants. Wu-Tang is for children. He's even got a YouTube channel. Jacobo. All right, I've seen him at all the events, man. He has the title. He was supposed to fight last night. Unfortunately, wasn't able to because his opponent did not show up to the weigh-ins, which got to be so frustrating if you're a fighter. You're trying to go in there, defend your title. It's just... anything can happen in this fight game. Something like that has got to be super frustrating for anybody. But at the same time, man, this is somebody, reason why I want to get him on the show, he's such a character. He fits everybody over at Cage Titan. It feels like they all fit just right. They all have something a little different about them that makes them special for the UFC or one of the bigger organizations, which is the UFC, in my eyes, to grab a hold of that and want somebody like that. And we got him calling in right now. Jacobo, what's going on, boss?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good, man. Let's jump right into the meat and potato of things. You were supposed to fight, and your opponent didn't show up. I mean, how does that feel? That's got to be so frustrating, man. I've been dying to see you fight. I've seen you at the events, and I wanted to see what you can do in there. So, how crushing was it?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm an undefeated professional fighter now. I'm 1-0. I beat the guy before he even came into the cage, without even having to throw a punch. People are now calling me No Punch Man. So, it is what it is. It's pretty devastating to not be able to show people what I'm capable of, but people know that I'm capable of destroying a man before he even fights me.
How did this fight get lined up? I mean, did you know him? Were you guys trading back and forth on Facebook? I mean, why do you think he didn't show up? Do we know the full story, or what are your thoughts? First, how did this fight line up?
So we're just looking for anybody who's willing to fight me, and he was one guy. He's the only guy that we know of who was agreeing to fight me. There's other names that are brought up. A lot of them turned me down. People who are holding titles in certain organizations didn't want that kind of challenge. He was the only person who accepted it. The week of the fight, he was very adamant about how he was going to be showing up at weigh-ins, showing up fight night. By the time it came around, he was nowhere to be found. No one could reach him. He wasn't contacting anybody. There's absolutely no sign of Kenny Lewis anywhere. So if anybody's seen Kenny Lewis, he's missing. Hopefully he's okay.
So really nobody's heard from Kenny Lewis at all? Like, he's just gone?
Nobody's heard from him. As far as I'm concerned, he's a lost boy.
Wow.
So, I mean, if anybody's out there and sees Kenny Lewis walking about, please return him home. People are worried.
This is crazy, man. And first off, I gotta say, I love your style. I can see why he might be a little intimidated by you. I mean, you're definitely somebody that you can, stare at, and you're a little intimidated, man. And we're all looking at your photo. I've seen you at the event. You got the title around your shoulder. I mean, I'm reading matter of fact, I'm reading your Instagram post. Won my first pro fight without even stepping foot in the cage. My opponent no-showed me at weigh-ins. In my sport, this is the most classless offense one can ever commit. I spent 4 hours short of a day in a sauna this week. Yeah, man, it's got to be super frustrating. You're going in there, you're taking time away from your family. You're not able to eat the food. You're going through the weight cut. I mean, it's just got to be so crushing.
Oh, yeah, man. Like, when people talk about going on fight camp, they're not actually going camping. They're not going anywhere. They're just going to the gym, doing the same old thing. When I'm in fight camp, I'm in a camp.
And you train at Citadel.
For my life.
You train at a really good gym. You train
What's that?
You train at Citadel, which is a very amazing gym that is very well known around this area.
Yep. I train at Citadel. I go to various different places across New England. I do training methods that people have never even heard of or can even fathom what I'm doing. So when I'm in a training camp, I'm legitimately in a camp. I'm not anywhere to be found. It's very impossible to contact me during those times. So, it was a really grueling camp coming to this fight. So I was pretty ready.
I mean, what are your plans next? I mean, what did you leave off with, like, Michael and everything? Did you get paid for this fight?
That's great. Yeah. Mike from Cage Titans, he's a good guy. He knew the commitment and the work that I put in, and he did pay. He is paying me my show money and my win money.
That's
because,
awesome.
I won. So I did everything I needed to do to be prepared for the fight. As far as what I'm doing next, I'm gonna go on an expedition. I'm gonna go north. I don't know when I'll be back.
So
we'll see if and when I return.
What do you mean?
How I'll have changed.
What does this mean? You're going on an expedition. What exactly are you doing here?
There's some things that need discovering, and I think I'm the person who's most capable of doing it.
What exactly do you mean? I'm a little confused. I'm sure a lot of people are confused with what you mean. Are you going on like a hike? Are you looking for an opponent?
We can call it an extended hike.
An extended hike. All right. And you got to make a promise if you're going to do that. You got to call us when you get back.
Oh, for sure, man. For sure. I don't know if I'll be in an area where there's cell reception. But if I make it somewhere, I'll be sure to give you a call.
Well, when do you think you're going to get back in there for a fight, man? I mean, a lot of people are dying to see you get back in there. Do you think at least by February, maybe?
We'll see. This trip, I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know if I'll ever come back. So we'll see what happens. If I make it home in a reasonable period of time, you'll see me fighting pretty shortly. But if not, who knows when I'll return? It could be years from now.
I'm interested, man. I'm interested to see what exactly you're talking about, and I guess only time is gonna tell. Let's jump into the meat and potato things before we let you go really quick. Did you catch the main event, and what were your thoughts with it?
Can you repeat that?
Last but not least, before we let you go, did you catch the main event with Joe Giannetti, and what were your thoughts?
What did I think about the event last night?
Yeah.
I thought it was a great show. I thought some of the fights that I thought were the best that night. I thought Kin Moy looked excellent out there. He put a clinic. Out of all the fights on the card, the only person who looked the most complete of a fighter was Kin Moy.
I agree. I totally agree, man. He just called in a minute ago.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he called in like a minute ago.
Yeah,
we just talked
I believe Kin Moy is he's a complete package. When you look at all the other fights, there's a lot of talent on the card, from the main event, co-main event, and further down the card. The only fight that really stood out as an example of an exemplary martial artist was Kin Moy's fight. Looked great after a 2-year layoff. Looked excellent. Another person I was really impressed with was Jack Stapleton. That kid is sick. God.
Yes, he is, man. He got a submission of the night early on. He's a young kid, too.
How many calf slicers can you say have ever happened?
And he had a knee bar before
one
that?
of 10 calf slicers ever in history. So that's pretty impressive. Feat that he pulled off.
Man,
Daniel Pino looked pretty good. He had a year and a half or so layoff, and he was going through some things leading up to that fight. So he looked impressive, in my opinion, against a very top caliber opponent. Johnny Cupcakes, I feel like he may have been robbed in that fight. And he looked very good. So those are the highlights of the card for me.
Jacobo, I want to thank you so much, man, for calling in. We got to reconnect when you get back, man. I'm really interested to see what's going on here. So only time is going to tell. Thank you so much for calling in, man, and safe journeys. Last but not least, if you have any sponsors, any shout-outs, anything at all, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout-out to the New England Martial Arts Association. This entire training camp, they've done everything to help provide for me. I haven't had to work. I haven't had to do anything. These people really just took care of my entire training camp and all my expenses. So look out for the New England Martial Arts Association in the future. And shout out to Mike Pulvera, Cage Titans, for just being a stand-up guy.
100%. Jacobo, thank you so much, man. Safe travels. And we'll talk to you sooner than later.
All right. Peace out, guys. Peace.
Man, how interesting is that? We got Brian Gerson calling in. How interesting is that? I need to know, right? Like, what is he doing? What is his plan? What is his? I'm going to tell Gerson what just happened. Wait till I tell Gerson what just happened here. That's so interesting. My mind's going crazy. Like, what could this? What is it? Is it like an expedition for self? He said there's some things that need some severance. Brian Gerson, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much.
Man, so I just wrapped up with your boy Jacobo, who, first time I ever saw him, I was sitting next to you, and you filled me in on his entire backstory, and ever since then, I've been really interested in trying to get him on the show. Well, listen to this. He just came on, and he gave us a piece of information that I'm just left baffled with. Literally, like, he just called in and told us that he's going on an expedition. He doesn't know if he'll be back or if he'll ever be back. There's something that needs severing. What do you think he's talking about here? Because what are your thoughts from just hearing that?
That's a pretty crazy story. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't want to speak for him, but if I had to guess, maybe I don't know. He likes he went to after his last. I think it was his last fight. What he did with his ticket proceeds is pretty cool. So he took I think majority of the money, or maybe all the money he took from what he made off of the tickets, and he gave it to the Puerto Rico recovery fund, I think. And he went out there and actually traveled and helped people out there, I think, and helped some cleanup stuff. So wow. I really have no clue what he's doing, but I would assume maybe he's traveling out of the country or maybe somewhere to meet up somebody. That's what he said. He's going up north. He said there's some things that need severing, and now you just add another piece of the puzzle for the listeners here, man. This is so I need to know what he's talking. He says he doesn't know if he'll even ever come back. And usually, you know how people are, man. Especially people who want attention. They'll tell you if they're going to do something good for somebody or do charity or something like that. He wasn't letting us in on anything. I'm in on this. Oh, okay. I think maybe now that you give me, he said he wanted to go up north?
Yeah, he wants to go up north.
Okay, well my new guess here is he might have some business that he wants to talk with Kenny Lewis, because Kenny Lewis was his opponent that he was scheduled to fight for, and there was a lot of trouble trying to even contact or even get in touch with Kenny Lewis on the behalf of Cage Titans. They were reaching out to him earlier in the week of Fight Week around Monday, and he still hadn't responded from the week prior to messages about getting forms and everything in, about getting approved by the commission. So maybe he's talking about that. Again, I don't want to speak for him, obviously, but if he's going up north, I don't know where else he would be going.
So yeah, we're getting pieces by pieces. Kenny Lewis, he was saying, I was like, have you talked to him? He said, no one has talked to him. No one's able to get a hold of him. And he was even like, guys, anybody out there, if you can get a hold of Kenny Lewis, he's missing. We're looking for him. He's nowhere on social media, nowhere at all. This is, did these two have a beef going into it? Is he pissed about something that Kenny may have said? Did he say something about his family, his culture? Do you know anything like that? What was it like leading up to this?
Okay, well, yeah, I can definitely provide some information to that. I mean, Kenny Lewis
Yes,
is an
Gerson.
extremely nice guy. So, like, for any of this to even go down, for him not to show up, not to even respond to any people at Cage Titans like that, anything like that, it's pretty surprising. He was an extremely nice guy. He fought Randy on the card prior,
Randy Costa,
and unfortunately was on the opposite end of that crazy knockout. But after that, he was totally fine. He was he was kind of out of it, but when he recovered fully and was in the back and talking to him, he was a really nice guy and everything like that. So I don't. There's definitely nothing that he said leading up to this that there was nothing I heard anything like that at all. There wasn't any disrespect between either of the guys. I think it just has to do with this whole not responding, not showing up, or anything like that.
Yeah, that's really unheard of here. That is kind of scary. Like, as soon as he said that, like, it goes through my mind, like, all right, maybe he just didn't show, or maybe something serious did happen. But if something serious did happen, I mean, how serious could it be? Is he literally physically okay? Is the real question here. Or is he just shook? I mean, you were at the weigh-ins. What were people saying? What were people thinking? What did you think?
So, I didn't think Kenny Lewis was really going to show up by weigh-ins time. He wasn't responding to anybody at Cage Titans prior to the weigh-ins. So
for how long?
My expectation going into the weigh-ins was that Kenny Lewis wasn't going to show. And the big problem here that went into this was that Jacobo had to cut weight for that whole thing. He went through that entire process of draining his body and draining the nutrients and the water from his body, from his brain. He cut all the way down to. I was talking to him. I'm pretty sure he cut all the way down to 130. He was on weight, ready to go at the weigh-ins, and he learned like an hour before the weigh-ins that he wasn't going to have an opponent, wasn't going to have a fight. So even in my opinion, I think that's very unprofessional. That's uncalled for, and that's something that you can't do at all. You have to reach out at some point if you're not intending to show up. You can't just no-show your opponent because stuff like this happens. He was telling me, I don't want to exactly about numbers out. He would probably tell you better himself, but he was cutting down from a significant amount of weight early in the summer to get to the 130 mark that he was looking to. So it's pretty classless, honestly, in my opinion, that he didn't show up or say anything.
So, obviously, man, that is just so interesting. His entire story, what he just said, and you coming on at, like, the perfect moment, like, right after him, leaving us with a cliffhanger. I think we might have found out, like, what may be going on here, and we got to keep you guys updated. So, really quick, before we go on with this interview, obviously you're writing for MMA Sucko, man. I mean, are you going to cover this or what? I mean, this is a crazy story. I mean, I'm not like a journalist like you are, but for somebody not to show up, that's a pretty big story. Like the missing poster here for Mr. Kenny Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I'll be following up on and talking. I'll definitely be reaching out to Jacobo. I think I was talking to him at the fight itself about it. So it's something I'll look into. I mean, it's definitely something that happens, though. It's something I don't think a lot of people really know, especially the fans. I think you and I understand that this thing happens, especially at the regional level. People don't show. I mean, I know I've been to regional shows and weigh-ins around this area in the past 12 months, and I've seen a few opponents just absolutely no show and fights get called off. So it is something that happens frequently, and it's something that shouldn't happen at all, really, unless it's some kind of emergency or some kind of like extenuating circumstances. It is something that's frowned upon by everyone, especially I think you and I, from our perspective. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to look into it. I think where I left that question, but it sucks, and I think more people need to know that it's happening a lot, and it shouldn't be.
It just happened to Jesse James. It's happened quite a few times to Jesse James.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, man, it's definitely really upsetting. I've been wanting to see Jacobo go in there and, even see him at events and stuff that you've been telling me about him. It's an interesting story there. But let's move on with this interview here to wrap up the Cage Titan 41 recap, man. You were there. You did a lot of work. You were at CES the night before and then at Cage Titans the following night. You weren't able to catch all the fights, man, but just the story going into this with Joe Giannetti, just the presence, the vibe. There's nothing like going to Cage Titans. I try to explain to the listeners here, if you've never been to a Cage Titan event, man, it's really something to experience. The way that you walk in, the crowd is just so loud. Everybody knows every single one of the fighters. It's like a close-knit family every time you go there. What was the energy like for this event specifically compared to others? For me, it was obviously the storyline here. What was the vibe that you were picking up? What was the energy level? And how would you rate this event as a full when it comes to not just the fights, but the event as a whole?
That's a great question. So I've been to quite a few Cage Titans events. The first one I covered live at the event was 37. So this would be my fourth or maybe fifth. I don't know how the math adds up there, but it was yeah, I was never good at that, but it was definitely a different vibe. I mean, so with just the fighters on this card, like guys like Randy Costa, Joe Giannetti, Johnny Campbell, even Dan Dubuque, because Dan Dubuque's his crowd definitely travels. So when you have guys like that on a card, you're going to have a lot of energy, and you could feel that from even before the show began, because I always usually show up early. This time we tried to do a pre-fight live show from the venue up on the Cage Titans page, but we did, and you could even feel from the inside of the venue the energy that was coming from the outside. People were lined up waiting like at 3:30, like out the door, a long ass line down out the street. So it was definitely a crazy vibe. In the back, I can't say it. Usually when I'm up in the locker room, it's calm because you have all the corners and all their fighters, and usually before the end of the night, you have to keep calm, obviously, before you get out of the fight, or you have to pump yourself up. So there's certain emotions that need to be precisely emitted at the right moment. So it's kind of hard to judge the vibe up there. It's usually the same. But from the stadium point, it was probably one of the loudest I'd ever heard it.
I agree.
From the Randy Costa fans and the Joe Giannetti South Shore fans. It was wild. Definitely one of the better nights of fights. I did not catch all the fights, but I catch the majority of the fights. There was a few fights that I got cut off because I was interviewing people here and there, but great night of fights. Everyone really showed up. I mean, some people might say, the decisions here and there. Even in the main event, I thought it was a really competitive fight. I mean, Harvey, for me, kind of had the first two rounds, but then Joe Giannetti put a storm on him in that last three rounds, and even in the co-main event, that was a crazy fight there too.
Let's talk about the co-main event really quick, Gerson. I mean, going into this, like you were saying, Johnny Cupcakes, who he might even be calling in right after you, but he's actually playing hockey right now. But by the morning, I'll have the interview uploaded for iTunes or whatever. But going there against Dan Dubuque, there's a storyline that happened here. I mean, Joe Giannetti originally wanted to fight Dan, right? So bring us through this and how this happened, because Joe ended up getting the title from Dan, who was the champ in that weight class. Do you know that story?
Yes. So this story goes quite a ways back. Before Joe made the Ultimate Fighter, Dan and Joe were scheduled to fight on Reality Fighting on one of their cards. What happened, and pretty much everyone involved in the situation understood that this was it was okay. But Joe dropped out of that fight because he made the Ultimate Fighter. He went to the tryouts, and they called him back. They asked him to come to the house, and that's an amazing opportunity. And I think everyone, even Dan, when I talked to Dan, he was like, "Yeah, that's something that we understood. It's not that big of a deal." Yeah. But the reality situation is that they were scheduled to fight before, and now that Joe's back. Dan is the lightweight champion. He won it in an incredible performance. I mean, that fight with Jimmy Manning, I was there. It was Cage Titans 38. It was pretty much domination from the beginning. Manning was in trouble from the first 30 minutes, and Jimmy Manning is one of the best fighters out here locally in the Plymouth in the New England scene. So for him to do that was very impressive, and it goes. I think it. Factored in that performance and what Dan has done in his recent fights, that he deserves a little bit of leeway, being the lightweight champion, So I think that for Dan's camp and with Cage Titans, it was understood that he wanted to go down to try the bantamweight division. And in the midst of this is when the Ultimate Fighter was happening, when the final episodes were coming out, and the finale came up, and everyone who wasn't directly involved with Joe figured out, oh, hey, he's in the finale, and he's actually going to fight to be the Ultimate Fighter. And so this is more of a background thing with Dan, that he was deciding to go fight for 35. And then as the fight was lined up for Joe's finale, that's when really it was more, the talk was kind of building up, and then the fight happens, and then all that stuff happens, and Joe ends up not getting signed with the UFC, and that's a whole other story that I think you've covered before too, and of course it sucks, and I'm totally with you on that, but that's exactly when Joe came back. It was a couple months in, and Dan was like, hey, I'm jumping down to 35. I want to fight for the 35-pound title against whoever wins it. That was around the time of Perrin versus Cupcakes for the bantamweight title. So Joe came back and was like, hey, I want to fight for the 55-pound title. I was just at the Ultimate Fighter. I think I deserve it. And he had a claim for it too, definitely. But like I said, with all this past and what Dan has done, I think he deserved an opportunity to go test the waters at 35 and see if he could make this, because another factor that I forgot to mention is Dan is not a very big 55er, let alone a big 45er. He doesn't cut a lot of weight at either of those in either of those divisions, and it makes sense generally for where he fights weight wise and his build wise for him to even attempt 35. So it all made sense for him to be attempting this 35 thing and having the 55-pound champion go down and fight, or a challenge to fight for the 35-pound title. It's an intriguing storyline, kind of, that's been in the news, and that's basically how this whole thing happened. And Joe certainly felt like a person for what he's earned and what he did, especially in the Ultimate Fighter house, which was very impressive. He destroyed both of his opponents. He had the quickest submission in UFC Ultimate Fighter history.
Ultimate Fighter history, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So he definitely had his claim to that 50-pound title, but Dan was here. He headlined the fight. He was doing stuff for Cage Titans. Joe wasn't. So I think that is what ended up being like the deciding factor of, hey, Joe, you gotta maybe let Dan do his thing here before you call for that title.
Yeah, people were in an uproar around here on the East Coast about all of this, so it was interesting to see last night's event. And obviously, Campbell versus Dan, the way it ended up, it went all 3 rounds. You had Savage Perrin there. Were you able to catch that? Did you talk to Perrin at all? Because he's holding the title right now, and he was actually saying he would like to fight, I think he said Kin Moy, who was just on the show a little while ago, who called in second. Did you catch that? And how do you feel about the rematch between Cupcakes and Dan, or one of them getting a title, or Kin Moy getting the title shot against Perrin? How do you stand in there?
It's all like very confusing, right?
Yeah.
This whole area, right? So I talked to I talked to Kin Moy on camera. I talked to Dubuque on camera, and I also have an interview with Jay Perrin that's going to be coming out. It's out on YouTube now.
MMAsucker.com, correct? People can go.
On their YouTube channel, MMA Sucker. The interview's up right now, and it's his reaction to everything that happened and who we would like to fight.
Oh,
so
I gotta check that out.
Basically, what happened going into this fight was, obviously there was that bantamweight title I mentioned a little earlier between Jay Perrin and Johnny Cupcakes Campbell. That was it was a very odd fight because it was somewhat close, but depending on how you saw it, you could give Campbell 3 rounds maybe, but you could also give Perrin 4 rounds, 4-1. Like it was a very confusing fight. Me watching it there, it seemed like it was down to 1 round for me at the very end, 2-2. But then watching it back, it seemed more like Perrin was controlling it. So there was a lot of talk around that fight, and I'm not exactly sure where I stand on that. Still, I'd definitely say that Jay won that fight, but right now. Just the talk, I would say it was a little more confusing, and it's still bleeding over now a little bit. But in terms of now, with what happened with Dan wanting to come down to fight for the 30 fight at 35, the whole scenario with him was picking up from there. I guess is he wanted to fight for the title on this card. He was saying, "I'm preparing for a 35 cut. I want to do it here." Perrin had been fighting a lot in 2018. I think with the Campbell fight, that might have been his third or fourth fight in 2018. So he had been beat up from doing all the camps and preparing and even being in this fight. So he wanted to take a break off, and he wanted to wait till 2019 to fight again. So that left Dan in a spot where he wanted to fight, but he wasn't necessarily guaranteed that title shot when Perrin comes back. So he needed to stay active and prove that he could beat the title contender when the champion does come back. So Campbell, having that loss and feeling like he was right there very close in that fight, he decided, hey, I'm going to take that fight because not many people around here are going to be taking that fight.
Yeah.
And if I win that fight, I can prove to Cage Titans, everyone around, that I deserve that rematch and I deserve a shot back at my title. Obviously, it played out the way it did, and it's kind of ambiguous now, but even before that, there was this kind of side thing that not many people paid attention to, really, and that was Kin Moy's return. And Kin Moy, I think a lot of people know, I think a lot of fans know, he was a very big force a couple of years ago in the New England scene as a bantamweight. He fought for Bellator, he fought for CES, he fought Andre Sukumtov twice. I think he's one-on-one against him.
Yeah, first time he won, the second time that he lost.
Yeah, I think the second time when Sukumtov beat him, I think that was when he got signed to the UFC. I might be wrong on that, but so Kin Moy is a very well-known, talented fighter in this area, and he had a matchup against a guy named Patrick Corrigan, who comes out of camp in Florida called Gracie Tampa. Obviously, that with the name Gracie, it's a very storied gym, and they've sent fighters up here to Cage Titans before, and they've done really well. In the last Cage Titans card before this one, Daniel Montos pulled off a huge upset against Don Shanis, and that really kind of opened everyone's eyes to, this camp is a really legit camp, and they have really good guys. And Patrick Corrigan coming out of here, he had a really good amateur record. He had a good pro record too. He was 2-1. I think he had either 1 or 2 finishes on his record too. So it was a challenging fight for Ken in his return, and it was kind of on the quiet, on the low, I guess is what we would say now, was also a contender for, if someone is impressive in this fight, they could be fighting for that belt when Jay returns. So there was that added story that wasn't really brought a lot of talk, but it was there, and seeing how it played out in both fights, it makes a lot more sense from Jay's perspective to fight Kin as it does with Dan, because obviously Dan immediately after the fight in his interview said, I'm going to fight Cupcakes after this. And in my interview, he was adamant about that. He said, I said it, so I'm going to do it. So that's what his plan is. That's what he's going to do. He's going to fight Cupcakes in the next Cage Fights, which I believe is in January. So
Perrin said this?
Cupcakes, and that's his plan.
Perrin said this?
Cupcakes, Perrin said... So Perrin said that he wants to fight Kin Moy.
Yes,
and
yes.
His perspective is that basically because of the fights and how they played out, obviously Dan's fight with Johnny was very close, and I had scored for Cupcakes in that fight.
I did too. I scored it for Johnny as well.
Yeah, I thought there was a 10-8 round in the second round, and I thought honestly Johnny won the first round too, and I thought Dan clearly won the third, but it was still a 10-9. I don't know. I thought the judging, which is a whole another kind of story here, was a little bit off that night. But yeah, I don't know what you're gonna do if you leave it up to the judges' scorecards. Anything can happen.
Yeah, man. So during that fight, a matter of fact, Perrin's walking around me. I had the GoPro out because I do the live action fight companion, which you've been a big part of as well.
Oh, yeah,
and you guys will see the new one dropping tomorrow. But I got to say this, man. Perrin was walking back and forth, like he got right into my frame. It was so perfect. He's sitting there telling Cupcakes and Dan, he's screaming boring and all that. Man, it was so funny to watch. And then him go in there afterwards. I gotta agree, Kin Moy put on the best performance of the night. Even Jacobo agreed with me there and said it himself. I think that, for 2 years being gone, what he was able to do in there, he just looked phenomenal. UFC caliber level, in my opinion, 100%. Like, that would be a good fight. Perrin versus Kin Moy, that's something I'd push for. Cupcakes versus Dan, I think that, I wouldn't mind them running that back, but there wasn't that much action there. Those two were just it was like a battle for... It was exhausting to watch because both of those guys were going in there wrestling, and I think Johnny Cupcake had the better with the striking as well. I mean,
yeah.
Dan's...
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I think in that fight, it was... I don't... From what I saw, the Cupcakes before he fought Perrin was on a pretty hot streak. I think he had won 4 in a row, or maybe 5 in a row, had 3 or 4 finishes in that time. So there was really what Perrin did in that fight to beat him was kind of like outline a game plan or a way that you could beat him, hold him against the fence, kind of frustrate him a little bit, make him stiff against there, and try to make him try to explode, because Johnny likes to explode and be unorthodox and stuff.
We saw that.
Fight that way.
He was able to do it a couple times last night.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
He was able to do that a couple times last night when he was able to get the distance. He just starts winging these shots. I mean,
exactly.
It was exciting when that would happen, 100%.
Yeah.
So I see the insight now.
Yeah, but sorry, I may cut you off again, but
no, you're good. You're good.
With Dan, it seemed like when Dan kind of realized that Johnny was going to be a lot stronger than he anticipated, coming down from his weight, it looked like Dan tried to use a lot of the wrestling, and especially after he got hit with that huge, it was an overhand, right? Yeah, he got hit with that huge overhand. It looked like really Dan was really trying to just use the wrestling to kind of even control and get his wits about him. But I mean, credit to Dan, he didn't stop at all. I mean, he was like kind of out of it for maybe 10, 15 seconds, but the third round, he was throwing elbows, and he was getting after, and he won that round. So I mean, credit to him. He's tough as hell. He's like steel. It's really hard to finish that guy. I mean, Manny Bermudez took him all 3 rounds. He couldn't finish him, and that's a testament to look at what that guy's doing right now.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, moving forward, man, Randy Costa, I think, put in another amazing event, another amazing fight, going there, getting the finish the way he did. What would you like to see Costa do next, man? I think he's one of the big stars in the making here for Cage Titans. I mean, I just love how, I was saying this earlier on in the show, Bri. I was like, every one of these guys has their own personality, their own character. Yeah. I mean, I love that about Cage Titan. It's so, what they have there is just so different and so perfect for an underground scene where it's like a TV show. It really is. It's an undocumented TV show where if you know what's going on, it's the most exciting thing right now in the MMA scene if you know what you're looking at.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right?
Cage Titans, I think, is one of the best platforms out there. I mean, I don't want to insult any of the other promotions out here, because I think New England is one of the great regions for MMA. There's a lot of great places to go. Even if you're in Maine, I think NEF is a great place. They put on a great show. CS is a great show. We have Bellator that comes out here. Reality Fighting's great. Premier FC is a pretty good show out there. They're a good show too.
Ammo,
good,
there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, but Cage Titans, there, the way that they do it, it's so oriented towards the fighters, and they allow for them to be open-ended and whatever they want to be. It's truly, in that sense, it's one of the definitely the best platform in the New England. And in terms of Randy Costa, it's hard for me to say, because that guy has serious skills. He 3 or 4 more fights, and he needs to be on a UFC card. He needs to be on the UFC roster. I think right now, even like he has the skills and the talent to be in the UFC. It's just
he's
more
got
about
so little
giving him the
fights.
cage time and someone to really actually kind of push him and push his limits more. So the thing we haven't seen is wrestling or grappling out of Randy, but in this fight he showed unbelievable counter wrestling. The guy that he was fighting, Chris Thorne, his whole fighting base is wrestling, and he got a really deep shot in on Randy off that kick, and Randy defended really well. The guy was deep in on his hips for a second, but he shot right back out. He circled out, and he was gone out of there. His space was evaporated in a matter of seconds. So I think someone with a little bit higher of a wrestling caliber, of a grappling caliber, maybe to challenge him and give him a little bit more time in the ring, and maybe get to a second round actually in one of his fights. That would be nice for him, but he's seriously someone that people need to be watching because he's got a really high ceiling.
It's like, don't blink every time Randy steps in there. And I tried reaching out to him, guys, to try to get him on this podcast. I told him it wouldn't be a show without Randy Costa, but unfortunately we weren't able to get a hold of him. It's hard to round up these guys the day after the fight to have them come on. But, man, last but not least, we got to talk about one last thing. It's the end of the year. What's been your favorite fight card so far this year on the underground scene that's really stood out to you?
Oh, man, that is such a hard question. Let's see. God, there's so many good fights.
And can we talk about Lion Fight too for a second? I mean, guys, you guys want to watch something really interesting, go check out me and Brian Gerson on the live action fight companion for Lion Fight. That was a really good card that night.
You know what I was going to say, actually, Eddie, I was going to say it had to be one of the times that we were hanging out at the fights, because there's nothing better than hanging out with someone that you like, someone that's your friend, that you can just like hang out and be yourself and watch a fight and just be like, oh shit, have those oh shit moments, and just hang out and watch a fight. So, I mean, I don't think the Lion fights were necessarily the best fights, but it would have to be something where where everyone on the media scene was just like hanging out and having a good time. So maybe one of those Lion fights, maybe Lion Fight 45 or Lion Fight 46, because those were unbelievably fun.
All right, last but not least, what was your favorite fight of the night that you were able to see? I mean, can we talk about Stapleton before we let you go? That's one person I really wanted to get on the show. We couldn't. He ended the fight in a calf slicer. You told me a little bit about him, and then I went outside after his fight and after Randy fought, and I was doing like a little thing because it was so loud in there. And here comes Stapleton running out. It's going to be on the fight companion, guys. He comes running out, and he starts screaming. He tells me that, he's been watching Pure Evil MMA for a while, and I was just so blown away. I like this kid.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you brought up this kid, because I saw him fight at Combat Zone 67, and I mean, after I saw him fight Combat 60 Zone, I was like, who the hell is this kid? Like, this kid's got some incredible jiu-jitsu, and I love jiu-jitsu, I love grappling. I mean, I love everything about MMA, but I'm a grappling guy, and it's like some people grapple and they hold and they control. This kid is not one of those guys. This is a kid who will go after you every single second on the ground. Doesn't matter where he is. Doesn't matter if he's on his back. Doesn't matter if he's at some weird, funky angle. He's constantly going after a submission. So Jack Stapleton is someone who's extremely exciting. And the kid he fought, Sam Stewart, is another extremely exciting kid with some amazing jiu-jitsu. He fights out of Savory BJJ, which is an amazing school run by Danny Savory, who is an amazing jiu-jitsu coach. So it was just like a dream matchup for someone like me, or any jiu-jitsu buff, really, honestly. I think if you like jiu-jitsu, you should go and watch that fight. And it really wasn't jiu-jitsu until the end, when they kind of got wrapped up. But it was kind of cool to see how two really talented young jiu-jitsu fighters really kind of figured out those problems. They stuck with the striking. Stapleton was extremely aggressive, and I think he's someone to definitely look out for on the amateur scene, and even coming up if he wants to make the transition as a pro and try to make it a career. I think he's someone to definitely look out for, especially at the lower weights. 125, I know, might be getting a little bit faded out, but he's someone who can make that division really exciting.
I agree, man, and he's another character in the game. He knows what he's doing in there. He's young enough. Definitely. He's part of that. He could be that new era for the MMA scene here, and especially, I gotta say this, a calf slicer. That's how he won.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I don't think I've ever seen that live. I've never seen a calf slicer live, I don't think.
No, me neither. That was definitely the first one for me.
Yeah, 100%. Last but not least, what would you rate last night's event out of 10? I gave it a 9. I think it definitely had everything that you want when you go to a live event. What would you rate last night's event?
So I will give it a 9 also. I only give it a 9 because of myself and not being able to watch all the fights. if I was able to watch all the fights and sit down there next to you, it definitely would have been 10 for me. But the fact that I had to just do, I mean, I don't hate that I had to go do what I do because I love that too, and it's amazing. But the fact that I couldn't sit down there and watch the fights, which is the true number one thing for me, is I love watching fights. The fact that I couldn't do that for every single one, for every single minute, was a little bit distracting. So I'll give it a 9 for that reason. But another amazing night of fights. Cage Titans does it again. The environment that is in Plymouth Memorial Hall is probably the most unique environment there is for regional MMA. Definitely in this area. I don't know about nationally, but definitely in this area.
I 100% agree. Last but not least, I know I keep saying that, but you know what we like to do at this point in the show. Where can people find you on social media, and obviously on MMA Sucker they can find you with all the new content. Do you have all the new content up right now?
So the interview with Perrin is up now. We're gonna have the interviews for the post fight up tomorrow. I think all of them are going to be up tomorrow. Most of them are done, and then the other ones that aren't done are about 75%. So they should be all up tomorrow. All that stuff should be up tomorrow, and then everything should be up on the site later that night. On social media, everything, Twitter, Instagram, BG3R_MMA, and just Brian Gerson on Facebook or anything. Catch me anywhere, and catch any of the MMA Sucker crew. We're all doing a good job, and your crew out there at My MMA News, they do an amazing job, and of course you do the best job. You're an amazing guy, so got to give a shout out to you.
Thanks, Gerson. Oh, and when's the next show you're going to be at?
I think I was taught. I don't know if I got approved, but I was trying to get into the next Combat Zone fight up in New Hampshire. I know it's a long drive for you. I don't know. I mean, if it's a long drive for you, don't go out to it. But it's definitely going to be a really good show. Volka Clay is going to be fighting on the card in the main event. He's an extremely exciting prospect. 8-3, I believe, with a lot of crazy submissions. He's somebody to look out for. He's fighting Rodrigo Almeida. He's a veteran for the New England scene.
We just saw him fight. Yeah. I just saw him fight a couple weeks ago for Ammo, actually.
Yep. Yeah, he was in the main. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not the main event, but he was in the main card for that.
Yeah. So, all right, Gerson, thank you so much for joining us, man. I always enjoy when you come on Pure Evil MMA. Last but not least, have a good night.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I cut him off. Why do I always do that? I always cut everybody off at the end. Don't you hate when that shit like that happens? It's like you're saying bye, and then they say that last little thing. But, oh, my God. Oh, I got this girl messaging me. Did I do something wrong? No. Oh, my God. No, I've just been busy. Oh, my God. No. I literally wrote, I'll have to black out her name, but I really wrote, oh, my God, no. And I'm not lying about it. She goes, did I do something wrong? No. I am doing my interview. Yeah, my love life is pretty crazy. I usually have I'm such a slut. I really am. I get new girls every week. I mean, Tinder is one hell of an app. I got to say that. Tinder and just local girls here in the city. But I like this girl. I say that every other week. But I like this girl. She's emo. She fits my. She's like a scene kid. I think I need a scene girl. You know what I mean? I need my punk rock princess. So that's so funny. Did I do something wrong? Oh my God, no. No, you didn't do anything wrong. Let's see who else messaged me. Iggy. Oh my God, I didn't send Iggy the message. Okay. So I messaged my friend Iggy, who takes all the photos, and I didn't press the send button to ask her to come on the show tonight. And I was waiting for her to text me, and I didn't even press the send button. That's what an idiot I am. Look, I have all that written out and didn't press send. I'll send it now. Ready? And then I'll send her this clip. Be like, I meant to send you this. Oh, but Iggy, I clicked on her page on Instagram, guys. Go check it out. She does all the photography for Cage Titans, Lion Fight, CES, Ammo Fight League. I mean, one of my favorite photographers. She's definitely the next Esther Lynn, and one of the best to do. I always rock her getup. I got the Igdalia Medina hat, who shot you when you see that on my Instagram, because I do have the Instagram story. I was going to do it tonight. Maybe I'll do it after this. Maybe I'll go live again for you guys. But go check out Iggy's page, Igdalia Medina. Let me go check. Make sure I give you guys the right Instagram, because she takes all the photos and captures the best moments really quick. Let me get Iggy up in here with that. We just got your message. That's what she said. I'm so sorry, Iggy. So it's Igdalia LLC. That's IGDALIA LLC. I'm such an idiot. I'm such an idiot. But we'll get Iggy on because she wants to start her own podcast, get her in the scene, going on some broadcasts. But wow, how perfect was tonight's show, guys. Gerson calling in right after Jacobo. That was probably my favorite, because Jacobo left us literally hanging at the edge after saying, I got some business to sever. And I don't know if that has to do with, some environmental work, or if he has some personal issues, or if it's really about Kenny Lewis. I mean, where is Kenny Lewis for a fighter not to show up and go literally ghost? You got to kind of be like, all right, is this, him just being nervous to fight? Gerson was saying he's a really nice guy, or did something really serious happen? If something really serious happened, was it a family member passing away? Did you think that it would look bad? Well, it looks even worse when you just go ghost like that. And a fight promotion, when they see something like that happen, they're not going to want to hire you, and it's a shame. And I'm sure Kenny Lewis is a great guy, but this just sucks, man. I've been wanting to see Jacobo go in there, and I hope he's not gone too long. But hopefully he'll check in with us when he comes back from this, the severance, we'll call it. The severance of Jacobo. Man, tonight's show, Chris O'Brien calling in for Joe Giannetti, giving us the insight there. Kin Moy calling in, huge name here on the East Coast. Marty Navis out of Joe Lozon's gym. Jacobo Apito. And then ending the night with Gerson. Gerson is the best. The kid should do his own podcast. How good are his stories? I can sit here and listen to. I could do this every weekend with Gerson. I really could. I love these stories. And guys, if you are not in the East Coast area, go support your local MMA scene, whether on the West Coast, whether in Thailand. We got people out in France, and that's the one place you can go represent your local scene, unfortunately. Or there are a couple of places around the planet. But unfortunately in France, it is growing, but still not to the level that it's at. But go support your local fight scenes, because there's a lot of good characters, and there's nothing better than when you see a guy on the come up make it to the UFC, and we've seen this happen so many times in the last 5 years. It's unbelievable. Matt Bassett is one of them. Andre Sukumta, another one. I mean, this list is going on and on. The list is up here. I can go through it if you want, but those are just two guys that come to mind right now. Devin Powell. I mean, there's just so many of them over here from the East Coast. Nick Newell being another big name right there on the edge of things. Things are exciting here on the East Coast. Things are really exciting. Got a lot of characters here that you're going to see break through the MMA scene within even Jesse Jam Kazakowski. That's a Mikey Kimball. Matter of fact, Mikey Kimball. I'm trying to connect with him. We were going to do a walk in the park like I did with his teammate Jesse James Kazakowski. And check that interview down below, guys. It's not an in-studio. We take a walk. It's another fight companion interview where we walk, we talk, and it's a blast. I'm trying to do that with Mikey Kimball up next. He promised me he would do it. I mean, it's so cool when you see these guys put in all this work and they finally get to eat the fruit of their labor. And you're on Ariel Helwani's show. I mean, there's nothing better than that, man. It's just so amazing. It's so amazing to watch. And Cage Titans has a lot of guys that you need to keep your eye on. Randy Costa, Stapleton. I really like Stapleton. I wanted to get him on the show. But check out the Fight Companion. That's going to be dropping tomorrow night. I'm going to work my ass off. I'm making the promise to you guys tomorrow night. Right now is November 4th. Holy shit, November 4th. So tomorrow at this time, it's about 9:30 p.m. Tomorrow at this time, I promise the Fight Companion will be up here at youtube.com/PureEvilMMA. Guys, subscribe down below here on YouTube, iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you're tuning in right now. I appreciate it so much. We're killing it on the podcast scene, but I'd really like to raise the YouTube channel's numbers up. Let's make it to 1K subscribers. That way we can get the super chat going. Also, new merch. And last but not least, my favorite line. Guys, the Gloves Off podcast, where me and James McSweeney, Ultimate Fighter Season 10, first pick for Team Rashad, Boys with Brendan Schaub, beat Matt Mitrione. Roy Nelson Roy Nelson, Kimbo Slice. Go check out our podcast. It is the biggest hit, and it's also on the Pure Evil MMA channel. I'm Evil Eddie from Pure Evil MMA, mymmanews.com. Last but not least, behave yourself, guys.